In this video, we're going to migrate a virtual machine, which also could be a physical machine, from on-premises to AWS using AWS's Application Migration Service. Okay, before we get started, let's talk about the requirements to migrate this server up to AWS. Of course, we need an AWS account, we need a physical or virtual server, we need to run all the updates on the source server. We also need to install .NET Framework 3.5 or above, and then depending on how you access the server, we need to open the RDP port on the firewall on the source server as well. Okay, now that we've talked about the requirements, let's talk about the process of actually migrating the server up to AWS. First, we need to identify the servers, the virtual servers or physical servers that we're going to migrate up to AWS. And then we need to go through the steps of actually migrating the server, which is installing the agent on the source server, replicating all of the settings and disk information, performing tests on that server before we actually cut it over. Once we cut it over, then we can turn off the replication and then shut down the on-premises server. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First, we need to run updates, which I've done already. Then we need to make sure .NET Framework 3.5 or above is installed, so let's do that now. And I already have .NET Framework 3.5 installed on here. So I can cancel out of this. And then let's make sure that the RDP port is open on the firewall. So let's go there real quick. I'll enable this rule here and this one here. Okay, so that's all set. And then let's go ahead and log into our AWS console. I've already logged in here. You want to navigate to where we're at right now, but you can just type it in here to find it. Application Migration Service. All right, now that we're in the Application Migration Service, first thing we need to do, of course, is to add a server here. So we'll do that. It's a Windows server. We do want to replicate all disks. I only have one disk, but you can change this and specify which ones you want to replicate. And let's go ahead and create an IAM user so we can actually do the migration. And we'll just go by the default name here. And it already picks up the policy that we need for the migration. So we'll go and create the user. And we need to copy the key and secret access key for the setup. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this in the notebook. And I'll just download the CSV file just to be safe. Okay, that's done. Now we can go back to inputting the new access key we just created. All right, so now it's inputted all this information down here in this this command down here, but we need to download this exe file first. So let's go ahead and do that. Then we'll copy the command here. It's in the downloads folder, so let's navigate to there. Run this as administrator. All right, so we pasted the command in. Let's go ahead and run it. Let's see what happens here. This is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right here. We'll come back after it's done installing. Okay, now it's showing that it's installed the agent. Now we can go back in and check the status by hitting the back button here. And we got an error. It says it's stalled, so let's see what happened here. Agent not seen. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to reboot this server. Sometimes after you've installed updates or .NET framework, if you don't reboot, you get this. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to reboot, and we're going to try it again. Okay, now that we're back on the console, we can see that the server is showing up under source servers now. So if we go in and click on the server itself, it will give us a status report. It says it's not ready. It's still doing something down here. It's still running through these initial steps here. After it finishes these steps, then it's going to start replicating the disks. So we'll pause the video and we'll wait for that to happen. Okay, let's check the status of this migration. Okay, so it's replicated the disk that I have here, the 60 gig disk, and it's ready for testing. So we need to go back to source servers. Our next step is to launch a test instance so we can verify that this server migrated. Okay, you got test in progress. Let's while that's spinning up, let's go back and look at EC2 dashboard here. Let's see what's running here. We've got some instances running. So this is our replication. So behind the scenes, it's spinning up these instances. It's replicating the disks from the source server. Let's also look at volumes here. So notice we've got this 60 gig disk that we uploaded, and then this is the disk for the replication server here. And under snapshots, we've got a whole bunch of snapshots for that disk. It's going to take a snapshot every time it moves to a different step. After we complete this and do the cutover, all these snapshots will be deleted. So look under security groups, and we can see these security groups that were created during the process here. One for the replication server, one for the conversion server. The conversion server actually is the piece that converts the disks and uploads them to AWS. Okay, so it's spun up the conversion server here. Next thing it's going to do is it's going to prepare for the spinning up the test server. So we'll pause the video and wait for that to finish. Okay, so you notice that the conversion server is terminated, but the test server is up and running now. We'll give it a few more minutes to come up completely, and then we'll try to remote into it. Okay, our test server finally finished. If you were watching this, you might have noticed your test server terminate and then come back online again. Best thing to do is just wait for the status checks to pass, and then you'll know that that's the actual test server that you need to remote into. So what we're going to do now is make sure we can get in. So let's go to security and make sure we have a port open here. So we don't have the RDP port open, so we need to modify this security group. and I'm going to say any IPv4 address. Probably best practice to just choose my IP, but I'm just going to do this for ease. So save the rule here. Okay, and then we don't have a public IP address, so we need to add that for this test server. So let's go to Elastic IPs, and we'll allocate one for this instance. All right, there's the IP right there. So now we need to associate it with the instance that we're running. So we're going to choose that one that's the test server. And we'll allow it to reallocate it after it's done. Okay, so if we go back to instances now, we should have a public IP for this one here. And we do. So let's copy this. All right, so let's paste that main IP in here. All right, so we're in the test server here. Okay, we verified that the test server came up. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and just, we're going to shut this down. Now that we verified that we're able to get to the test server, let's go back to the source server, our on-prem server. And let's go ahead and make a change on here. That way we can verify that it is taking snapshots on AWS, and then when we do the cutover, we'll verify it by saying if this desktop shortcut is there. So let's just do okay, now that we've finished our test, and we want to go back into the application migration service and make some changes here. So let's go back into our source server here. And then we're going to go to launch settings here. And we're going to go through each one of these and make sure these are the settings we want for the final cutover. So let's go ahead and hit edit here. Okay, I'm fine with that. Right sizing instance type, that's fine. Operating system, licensing. We're going to leave this license included. The only reason why you would use BYOL is bring your own licenses because you were running this on a dedicated rack. And I'm just going to leave it legacy BIOS. You can also change it to UFA here. So let's go ahead and save these settings. Then we don't make any changes. We'll go down to the next one here. The launch template. So we're going to modify this. This is a little bit confusing. I ran into an issue with this because after you make the changes, you have to actually make that template the default template. So we'll do that at the very end. All right, so let's call this migration template. Okay, we're going to scroll down here. Instance type. It's going to guess on which one you want to use, but you can actually change this. We're going to leave it as an M5 large because my source server actually does have 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM, so we'll leave that the way it is. We're not going to use a key pair to log in. We're able to RDP in. And then for subnet, let's go ahead and change this to, let's change it to US East 1B. Otherwise, it'll just drop it in whatever next availability zone is available. So we're going to make it 1B here. and then select existing security group here. I'm going to leave mine the default, but I would suggest if this is a production environment, you create a new one for this instance or group of instances. Advanced networking, auto assign public IP, we're going to say yes, enable here. That way we don't have to reassign that when it cuts over. Storage, we do want to change this here. And then we're going to change it to, instead of IO1, we're going to make it a GP3. And then we'll leave all the tags the same. Under advanced details, I'm not going to change any of this stuff except for, let's say, shutdown behavior. We're going to make this stop instead of terminate. Termination protection, we'll say enabled. I'm not going to change the other ones, so we'll just go ahead and say create template version here. All right, now go back to view, launch templates here, and we're going to do this. We're going to select this, and we're going to go to set default version. It's this one here. All right, so next time it launches an EC2 instance, it's going to use these parameters here. So that's set up and ready to go. Let's go back to the Application Migration Services. So we've launched, we've set the new template here, the new settings, public IP, GP3, that looks good. Okay, let's go back to source servers here. And the next step is complete testing and mark as ready for cutover. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so it'll take a little while. It's going to terminate this test server. It's going to relaunch some other services. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and we'll come back to this when that's done. Okay, so if I go back to the EC2 dashboard, you'll see that our test server has been terminated. If we go back to the Application Migration Service, it says it's ready for cutover now. So let's go ahead and do that. So we will choose launch cutover instances. And once this starts, this would be a good opportunity to shut down your source server, because once the cutover is finished, there's no more replication between the two servers. So I'll go ahead and pause the video and then we'll wait until this finishes. Okay, just to check in here, the conversion server has stopped. It's going to be terminated pretty soon. And then our our final version of this server will be created here in a few minutes. So pause the video again, we'll come back to it when it's done. Okay, now you'll see that our server is running. All the checks have passed. Now we can go back over to the Application Migration Service and move on to the next step, which is finalizing cutover. So let's do that now. Okay, now we're in the part where we're almost done here. This is the cutover is complete. It's stopped replicating. So this, if you haven't done so already, this would be a good opportunity to shut down your source server. So the next step is just mark this as archived, so we can finish this up. Okay, at this point, it's going to start deleting any of the snapshots, extra volumes that were created during this process. While it's doing that, though, let's go back and make sure we can get to that server. So let's go back over to EC2 instances, and let's get that public IP for that final version of the server that migrated. Okay, it didn't connect, so let's go back and make sure that our firewall is set up properly and that we have the right public IP. Let's do that now. Okay, that looks like the correct public IP. Let's make sure that the firewall has a UDP is open. All right, let's try it again. Okay, it worked that time. I actually just needed a few seconds to get caught up. All right, so it did come out, and it did retain the test document we created during the testing process. So we know that the disks were replicating during that time. So let's go ahead and we're going to just shut this down. And let's go back and verify that everything else got cleaned up. So we're going to start with volumes here. Okay. So we're going to delete these two here. These will get deleted over time, but I'm just going to, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and delete them now. And snapshots. Let's go to security groups. And we can delete these two here. Okay, and then we also want to go back and make sure that we close up the RDP port. So let's change that on this default security group. Actually, one more thing we need to do on here too. Unless you're going to associate that elastic IP that we created earlier, this would be a good opportunity to remove that now. All right, so let's go back to the dashboard here, see what we have left. Again, 000, default security group's fine. We have the one volume for the production server that we're running. And we shut down the instance, but it's still there. All right. So at this point, you would change your DNS settings, if you have DNS settings that point to that server, and then set up a security group just for that instance or group of instances that you're going to be migrating up, and then verify that your on-premises server is shut down before you start using the new production server. All right, so in this video we went through the steps to migrate a virtual machine or physical machine from your on-premises location to AWS's Application Migration Service. If you have any questions or comments, please put those down below. Also, I'm going to put in the description below some of the issues I ran into while going through this process. Hopefully it'll help you if you have to migrate something up to AWS. And if you would, please subscribe and like the video so I can create more of these. Thanks.